Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Halloween. I'm Tenyan. I'm here with my brother Dan, and we're very pumped to have our final Halloween Horror Fest review for you. We've decided to go back to the roots of horror, old school style 80s slasher films, and we're going to be reviewing Friday the 13th, the final chapter released in 1984, partly in honor of its 40th anniversary this year, which it had back in April. Just a word of warning in case you haven't seen this film yet or know nothing about the Friday the 13th franchise, we will be getting into some spoiler stuff here. The premise is pretty much like any 80s style slasher you've seen. It picks up immediately after the events of the third film. Jason Voorhees is supposedly dead. After going on this killing spree, he's taken in an ambulance to a morgue and then mysteriously revives. There's various subplots involving teenagers, of course. There are teenagers vacationing in Camp Crystal Lake.
Wild,
And
right?
yeah. Um, Most notably, one of the teenage characters, Jimmy Mortimer, is played by Crispin Glover, who we all know famously from the Back to the Future, the first film, and delivers another quite awkward, eccentric performance here. So yeah, he's one of the teenagers, also like a virgin character. The main plot revolves around this character Trish and her 12-year-old brother Tommy Jarvis, played by Corey Feldman. You have another subplot involving Rob, who is on a quest of revenge. He wants to stop Jason in vengeance for killing his sister. Yeah, I mean, this film like blew me away with how like hammy and over the top and silly it was, and how like dumb the characters were. I mean, like profoundly stupid characters.
I think it's really good. As an entry in the franchise, I think it really holds up. I can understand why people retroactively look back and think of it as one of the stronger entries. There's a lot
Okay.
of really interesting, juicy stuff going on there. I think that Crispin Glover's portrayal kind of typifies the kind of eccentricity and the knowingness of the film. The fact that they know at this point what the subgenre is, they know the tropes, they know the codes as well as anyone, and they're gonna lay those on nice and thick and have fun with them
Yeah.
and they're gonna include the audience in the joke, right? So it's very much working like that classic sort of late slasher paradigm where everyone's kind of in on the joke, everyone's kind of in on the codes. We're all insiders here. Let's have fun with it. I think one of the biggest things going back and watching these films as an adult is that I noticed just how ironic and self-aware they are in a way that I did when I was really young, and I was just kind of like watching them on a much more visceral kind of primal level.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the other part of watching this film, and that part doesn't go away. There are elements of this film that I think they still strike me as a very primal experience, and have those moments where I think the irony, if it doesn't drop, it at least gets suppressed for a moment, and you have these moments where I would consider these like sort of like real raw moments in the slasher storyline, especially involving Jimmy and Sarah, the two, kind of virginal characters.
Yeah. You're right. Crispin Glover, like you said, is one of those actors that just like takes it to an 11 and will just like exaggerate an already exaggerated character. And he really knows what he's playing, a stupid teenage character. One of the most like laugh out loud moments for me was when they just get to the vacation home and turn on music and start jamming, and Jimmy, the Jimmy character, just immediately goes into this frenetic dance, and it looks like he's having a seizure.
It's the single most terrifying thing in the whole film is watching Crispin Glover dance. Um, and yet I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think that what Glover brings to that character is something of realness, real eccentricity, real personality that actually gives that character a more memorable sheen than he'd otherwise have. So to the extent that I after his arc when he's finally killed by Jason, I kind of feel it. I feel sorry for the character, and I feel sorry for the Sarah character for the same reasons, because the Sarah and the Jimmy characters go through the same arc of having what eventually turns out to be this incredibly positive, formative sexual experience, apparently very successful and very rewarding, and then everything's taken from them in a just like that. I think it brings another dimension to the Jason character, right? I mean, he's not angry specifically at these teenage characters because he associates them with his death. He's angry at them because they achieve something that he can't by having this kind of like successful moment of intimacy.
Well, okay, yeah, I definitely see that subtext then, and with any
Mhm.
slasher, and particularly Jason, wielding, a phallic-like implement,
Yeah. I mean,
that,
imagine Jason with a gun, right? Imagine Jason with a rifle killing somebody from a distance. It would be completely anachronistic. He has to be intimate with his victims because that's essentially what's happening, right? This is his attempt at a kind of coitus.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that. I guess I didn't emotionally latch on to any of the characters, even the Jimmy character.
Mm,
I just
mm,
found him very awkward and amusing and entertaining. I thought his death was handled a little ironically too. So,
mm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. They're kind of like doing a combination of things in this film. They want to play those codes up and be very hammy and funny with them. And those are the elements I really enjoy. But I think they also, by including the Corey Feldman character and actually having this sort of like triune relationship of the sister, the brother, and the mom, the single mom, there is this attempt, at least this nominal attempt to insert a more kind of emotional appeal and human interest into the storyline. That doesn't really come off for me because it's not what drives the slasher subgenre.
yeah,
But one of the things I do think is really interesting about the film is that the Feldman character, the little boy, is the proxy for the final girl. He's the replacement of the final girl. And I look at how those two characters are similar. They're both in this kind of like liminal in between space in their lives where they're on the point of transforming, becoming someone different. And the eruption of trauma and violence in the form of the slasher massacre becomes the catalyst for that. You're going to have to face it. You're going to have to go through the gauntlet of that violence, that trauma. And the
yeah,
question is, what are you going to look like when you come out at the other side? There's a reason these films focus so much on adolescence, on this sort of like transitional, experimental time in people's lives. And to go even earlier to into kind of pre-adolescence almost back to the roots, right? So we think about a young Michael Myers who kills his sister when he's still a little boy. Here we've got Corey Feldman, approximately, I think, the same age, again in this sort of transitional state, entering into adolescent male desire. We have that moment where he's a peeping Tom, right? So he's
that's
a
right.
proxy for, yeah, he's actually a literal proxy for Jason at a certain
Oh
point, right?
yeah,
I mean, he actually
yeah.
becomes Jason at the end of the film, essentially.
Well, yeah, and
Um,
that was they planned another trilogy of films with that character becoming the killer. So,
It never, yeah, it never got off the ground, but and of course there's that transition point where you don't know if that's what's going to happen to him.
yeah,
Again, it's very knowing, right? They know precisely what they're dealing with, and they treat the material with this great deal of self-knowledge and internal knowledge of the genre. Um,
yeah,
One of the things going to what's humorous about this though is that I think the kills are really effective. I love the kills. I think they're satisfying. Uh, but it's like every kill features a different tool, right? So it's almost like, you know, Jason Voorhees has this like tool belt. Like, oh, well, I've already used that. I'm time for the harpoon.
yeah,
And where exactly did he get the harpoon, right? It doesn't really matter. So
sure,
that's very humorous to me, but it also, I think, again, sort of like emphasizes the nature of our of the appeal of these films is that we're going to get a lot of murders, and each murder will be different. We'll get a different kind of murder each time, a different kind of way to die.
yeah, 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 for sure.
My personal favorite one is Doug. Doug is the
Yeah.
the boy that Sarah loses her virginity to. Jason reaches through, crushes his head against the tile. It's just
Oh,
that's vintage Jason. That's, I
yeah,
mean, that raw power, but also the rage behind
yeah,
killing somebody in that manner. I feel that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, and that's again with the characters and the characters who are the victims in this movie. I mean, you can say this movie, yeah, introduces the Trish and Tommy characters to have characters you can latch on to, but then there are so many disposable characters, and this is the point where they really play up the stereotypes and tropes and are kind of just reveling in it. Like
Mm.
the other really stupid teen character is his name is Joe, I think, and he's like watching these like old black and white stag movies.
Oh no, that's not Joe. That's Teddy.
Oh man,
Remember, he's got the teddy bear.
oh man, that's how forgettable these characters are for me.
Well,
I'm getting the
their names don't really matter. His name only matters because it's a
yeah.
play on the teddy bear that he's got with
Oh
him.
man, yeah, I'm getting these characters names wrong. Man, dang. But
I like him though. He's funny for me
he's
because like
funny. He is.
it's this the fact that he's got this teddy bear. It's like it's really playing on this whole idea that all these characters are in a form of like kind of like arrested development. They're all in this kind of like strange liminal space where they're acting out in a dysfunctional manner, trying to figure things out because they have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
And then somebody figures out enough to finally face the killer at the end, but
yeah,
only just barely.
yeah. Yeah, and his death again is staged very ironically because he's watching
Mm.
the stag film, and then the projector is off, and so he goes up to the screen, and then Jason like knifes him through it. So
That is my second favorite kill because that's such a play on the whole idea of how dangerous it is to look, to
mm,
be a voyeur, right? I mean, if you're looking, you're being looked at. I mean, that's a play on that peep show moment where Corey Feldman's where Tommy is watching Sam and what's his name through the window as they're getting it on. And he's like losing it, like jumping
yeah,
up and down on his bed.
yeah,
But it's like that's a real moment again because looking is really dangerous in these films. Looking can get you killed, and it does get him killed in that scene.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Mm,
again, again, the theme of the gaze with
mm,
the whole window death scene, she's like just
mm,
staring through the window. I mean, she does like a triple take. I mean, she looks out the window, seems like she might see something, and then looks again, and then, looks again, comes back the window like a third time, and just, I'm getting, I mean, Jason plenty of opportunity to bust in there. So,
Yeah, and of course Jason has that one of a kind skill that the idea that camera trickery and editing make him appear to be anywhere and everywhere, right?
yeah,
He can just be wherever he needs to be to score that kill. It doesn't
yeah,
matter how big and lumbering he is.
yeah,
He's you never hear him coming,
yeah.
and he's always there when you least expect it.
I did like how Jason Voorhees is this juggernaut. He's like busting through, the homes, like breaking doors,
Mm,
windows, walls, and like charging at people. I mean, he just doesn't
mm.
walk with this like lumbering, tread. Like he is chasing after you and charging you down at full speed. So
Yeah, no, I think this anticipates the interpretation that we'll get from Kane Hodder later. I forget the actor who plays Jason in this one, but yeah, he's really effective.
one criticism I had involved the ending of this film, the final showdown between Jason, his standoff with the Trish character, and then Tommy gets involved. And there's one point in the fight where Trish knocks off his mask, his hockey mask, and you see his disfigured face. One of the choices in the film I probably didn't agree with.
Yeah, that's a criticism I have of the franchise in general. I mean, they take Jason's mask off way too often. It happens in the third film, happens in this film, happens in the eighth film. I mean, probably happens in other films. Yeah, he just the mystique of that. Actually, I mean, now that I think about it, it happens a fair number of times with Michael Myers too. You eventually do get, but it doesn't happen with Michael Myers as often. So I feel like they kind of overuse that a little bit as this great reveal, but that doesn't, you know, you lose traction on that pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
also, with all the respect that I have for Tom Savini, I don't find the Jason makeup, the Jason prosthetic in this film as effective as, for instance, I find the his appearance in the eighth film when the mask comes off. I think he's grislier and scarier looking.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more of a almost like a Frankenstein's monster kind of quality to him here, which um yeah, it's not terrible. But
Yeah.
it's not striking. It doesn't I remember even being disappointed about it as a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, well, this is like when Darth Vader's mask comes off, man. It's like, what's
Yeah.
going on here?
Well, and maybe they are intentionally trying to deflate
Mm,
this horror at that moment because there's this role reversal happening because
mm,
Trish is able to take down Jason Voorhees because Tommy distracts him, and the way he does
mm.
that, he makes himself up to look exactly like or very closely resemble Jason Voorhees as a kid. So
And somehow he knows what Jason Voorhees looked like when he was drowned under Camp Crystal Lake, right? I mean, he just knows, man.
yeah, he has some great references to work with. But I found
Yeah.
his look, the Tommy character, more frightening, and
Mm.
maybe that was the intent in that moment when the mask is taken off Jason. That was brought down a little bit, and actually, the real fear came from seeing this like
Well,
kid.
well,
Make
I think this
yeah,
notion they play with this notion in the Halloween films, right? Where the idea that a child character could become like the replacement for the slasher. So with
yeah,
one of Michael's descendants eventually becomes a masked child killer at the end of I think the fifth film. So they're playing with that idea, right? And like you said, there's this idea that he's going to be the heir apparent and become the new Jason. They never did that, but that was clearly the intent at the end of this film. Um, so it is interesting.
yeah, yeah,
That's potentially interesting. But yeah, I agree. I don't think Jason's mask coming off is this
yeah.
great big moment because they'd already done it in the third film. It happens in the third film.
That's true. Yeah.
Mm,
I mean, despite that criticism, it does end on a very unsettling note and,
mm,
left me creeped out. So I give it,
mm.
chops for that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
I think
yeah,
it's overall successful. It's definitely, I mean, it's definitely a legit slasher film, even
yeah,
as late in the game as it comes. It's always fun to go back and watch these films again. I think
yeah,
there's always something worthy and memorable about them. I'm just fascinated by slasher films. I think uh, it's my wheelhouse for horror films. That whole period where the culture had to express itself in this way. These films had to be made. There was just this irresistible impulse, and I feel that every time I watch one of them, even the
yeah,
most bargain basement generic ones have
yeah.
this sort of like animal need behind them that I never stop finding compelling.
But yeah, this ends our Halloween series. Again, to our viewers, thanks again for watching. And again, happy Halloween to you all. And yeah, if you're horror fans, hope you have a nice like slate of horror films you're going to be watching. And yeah, also please share any picks and recommendations you have for old or new horror. We definitely be interested in checking that out. But yeah,
Mm.
be well, take care, and we'll see you with some more content very soon here.